Hello everyone, welcome back for yet another coding video. This is part 3 of a little series we've been doing with this spinner project. So if you haven't done the other parts yet, go back and do that. But I was playing around a little bit more about this after our last part, and I discovered some cool things I wanted to share. And one thing is I wanted to point out that if you're ever playing with a project and you want to try a new version of it without impacting your current version, you can always go up to File and Save as Copy. So I'm going to do that for this. Now it's been saved, and now I can rename it to something else, which is awesome because sometimes you want to try something really different, but you want to be able to get back to where you were just in case it doesn't work out. So that's great. Now, I wanted to take this a step further in that, I can sit here and press the space bar 100 times, but computers are really great at doing repetitive things. We want to take advantage of that so that our coding actually allows us to do things that weren't possible without coding, or at least were really tedious without coding. So I'm going to make this so that I can repeat the spinning. And I could just plug in right here, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, and that would work. But I can also go to this sensing blocks, and in this section we have some variables that have been already set up for us, which are quite handy. So one thing we have is ask and answer blocks. So I'm actually going to ask how many spins, and then we will repeat this using the answer from that question. So if I answer the question 10, it would spin 10 times. If I answer way more than that, it'll spin however many times I say. Now, to make this a little bit more practical, I'm actually going to take out the animal noises, just because hearing 100 or 1,000 animal noises is probably not what we want. All right, let's test that out and make sure it's working so far. So I'll start the project, press the space bar. How many spins? I want to do 100 spins. And you can see my spin count going up. There we go, it stopped at 100. Now, when we're looking at experimental versus theoretical probability, we know that the more experiments we do, the closer we should get to the theoretical probability. So I'm actually going to try it again, and I'm going to do 1,000 spins this time. And as it's going, I actually start to notice that my code is biased. Now, you would think a computer program can't possibly be biased. It's a computer. It doesn't have thoughts and feelings and preconceived notions. However, behind every program is a coder who made it. And whether intentionally or not, we can introduce bias into our code. And I have unintentionally made very biased code with this program. And I started to notice it as I was experimenting with my spins here, because the more spins I do, the more obvious my bias becomes. And that bias is that it evaluates the color that it's touching in order. And I didn't make my spinner precise enough to be very accurate, meaning the black tip at the end of my arrow is quite large, and sometimes it's actually touching multiple colors at once. And my code, because of the order I put the colors in, actually will tend to pick the first color it comes to. So as these numbers are going up, you're going to start to see that purple gets chosen more often than red, which is more often than orange, and my yellow, green, and blue actually start to get chosen less often. And the more spins I do, the more obvious this bias becomes. So that's just an interesting thing to be aware of, that code can be biased, it is biased, and in our day-to-day interactions with technology, we should be looking out for the biases that may exist in the programs we're using. And as a coder, we have an ethical obligation to be aware that bias could be introduced by us, whether intentionally or not. And in this case, if this spinner were being used for something important, I could potentially be impacting people. So I would need to revise how it works to work more accurately so that I can eliminate as much bias as possible. So anyways, just something interesting to think about, and both through that lens of being biased in code and through also that lens of how can I take advantage of what code is good at to help me do things that weren't otherwise possible. So, I would never sit there and spin a spinner 5,000 times. That's just not practical. But in a matter of minutes, this program is able to do it for me, which, you always want to be looking for that advantage. What can it do that I couldn't do before? So just some food for thought today. Much less a coding lesson than, just some things to think about. So there we go.